Hello and welcome to Radically Alive Women Edgecast, Julia Butterfly Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I came across you not that long ago, even though, you came to fame in 1997, 1998, 1999 when you took this radical stand for a tree, and not just a tree, but for an ancient forest. And I think you've been doing that ever since. And I came across you and I was just, yeah, impressed and inspired that you would take such a radical stand. And then I found out that you've been taking radical stands beyond that afterwards, especially
Yes.
with the not paying taxes so that wars wouldn't be funded. And yeah, and with me came this question of, I want to hear how do you get to be such a radical stand? What does it take to be that?
Well, for me, I was actually just born this way. uh, I have a tattoo on my wrist that says, "To thine own self be true." And I got it tattooed there because growing up, actually being myself meant that I was getting in trouble all of the time. And I wasn't trying to be a bad girl, I was just being my authentic self. But the environment that I was raised in, my authentic self didn't fit into that environment. And so I was in trouble all of the time. And I really did. It's just like I just was birthed into this lifetime. The joke in my family is that the first cry that came out of my mouth was why, and I have been questioning everything ever since. And I had was born with this innate sense of justice, of like not right and wrong in a and good and bad in like a judgment kind of way, but in a heart-centered way, in a gut-centered way of like, okay, destroying ancient forest is not okay. It's like it's not a moral conversation. It's a although it can be for some people, it can be a moral conversation for sure, but like not a religious conversation, I should say, or a economic conversation. Rather, that from the depth of my being, destroying old growth forests is destroys beauty, it destroys health, it destroys future generations' lives. It just doesn't make sense on any level. And also, from the time I was little, if I saw something I didn't agree with or believe in, I was speaking out, even though it meant I would get in trouble. So it really is just a core to who I am. And I feel that that's part of what makes it hard being, especially a woman in mostly patriarchal systems, is that we have to be willing to get in trouble. We have to be willing to be ostracized. We have to be willing to be made fun of. All of these things that I think are sometimes harder for women in these systems that are designed more for men. But for me, it's when I love something enough, when I care something enough, I will go through great lengths to to speak up and take action for what I believe in.
Yes, and I'm glad. Yeah, I'm really glad because this seems to be part of your job in this lifetime is to just take these bold actions. And then I have a sense that many, every woman has that potential in her to feel that this is actually not okay. Whatever, these systems that you're talking about, the cutting down of trees, the fundamentally the killing of life on planet Earth at the fastest rate possible is not okay. And yet, even though that may have been alive in women and girls, something happens usually where that gets squashed. And somehow that doesn't seem to have happened for you. Like, how? Do you have any tricks there or any recommendations, even to reconnect to that, now that we're where we are?
I encourage people to listen, and especially women, to listen to our gut, to listen to our intuition, because I think that's what we're steered away from a lot of time. Because um, we will second guess ourselves too. We will doubt our own strength. We will doubt our own capabilities. I did too before I climbed Luna, the over 1,000-year-old tree that I ended up living in for over 2 years. I did not think that I should be the one to do tree sitting. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anyone in the activist circles. I didn't come from a direct action background. So I had a lot of self-doubt too. But one of the things that I've learned in my life is to trust my gut, trust my instincts. And when fear arises, instead of running away from it, lean into it. And that if we lean into fear, it will show us what we need to know. And so I see it as a guide, as a teacher, instead of as something to say stop and run away. It's actually my teacher, my guide. And I think that that's really important for us as women, that if we will trust our intuition, if we will trust our gut, and when fear arises, lean into it instead of stopping and running away, we will find strength. We will find tools. We will find allies that we would otherwise never even expect to find.
I'm so glad that you're saying that, because I get a hint of that. That must be something you have been doing. And the part that I think is also really valuable, that you've been doing things before you knew how.
Yes.
Can you say something about that?
I always encourage people, don't let the fact that you don't know how to do something stop you from doing it anyway. Because I didn't know how to do most of the things I ended up doing in the tree. I didn't even grow up with a television, and all of a sudden I was having to do media. I didn't understand media. I wasn't even exposed to it. And this was during forced social media like we have now. And so I was just not exposed to media, and all of a sudden I'm having to be a spokesperson. I had to teach, basically put myself through forestry school up there. I had to learn how to deal with all kinds of opposing forces, including people trying to kill me. I didn't know how to do any of those things. Like I didn't know that was coming. And so I like to use analogies and metaphors because they help me kind of understand things better. And so the example I use is that if you're walking down a road and there's a curve or a bend in the road, you can't see what's on the other side of that bend unless you put one foot in front of the other. And that as you take one step to the next step, it shows you where the next step is, and then you put a foot there, and then it shows you where the next step is, and you put a foot there, and then you see what's around the corner. So we get afraid of, well, I don't know what's around the corner. I don't necessarily know how I'm going to get myself there. Well, the way we get there is put one foot in front of the other, see what there is to learn, apply that learning. That learning will then move our foot to the next place and the next place. And the same in life, that just because I don't know how to do something doesn't mean I can't start. I just start. And then I will come up against a challenge. Absolutely. I've come up against a lot in my lifetime. But when I come up against that challenge, then I think what holds a lot of us back, all people, but especially women, are afraid of failure. And our fear of failure and the sense of shame that we associate with failure will have us stop. And I was like that when I was younger. I held a lot of shame, even though I was willing to just kind of do anything. I still held a lot of shame because how I was raised. But what I came to realize is that it's only a failure if we don't learn something from it. Just as a scientist will go into a lab expecting to fail, they actually go into the laboratory excited to fail because it's going to lead them to the next big aha. That we make meaning out of failure that's not actually true. So if we will just like lean into fear, lean towards that failure instead of being ashamed by it, then we go, okay, well, let's look at what worked, what didn't, why, what is my gifts and my skills, and maybe where is not my gifts and skills, and maybe I need to find my allies, my tools to help me be better in this area. And all of a sudden we've learned something from it, and I'm a better person as a result of that. And because of that, it can't be a failure. I can't become a better person from something and it be a failure. The two can't happen at the same time.
Cool. So making mistakes, so to speak, is part of the journey of paving your own path and being true to your own self.
Absolutely, because if we're not making mistakes, we're staying in a small zone. Like, we don't need to make mistakes if we're staying in a very small comfort zone. If if we want to be authentic, if we want to grow our capacity as a human being, if we want to make a true difference in the world, we have to go to the outside of our comfort zone. And when we're on the outside of our comfort zone, we are absolutely going to make mistakes. That's just, we're just signing up to make a mistake. It's like, that's what I tell my coaching clients. Just go ahead and sign up to make the mistake. And then once you do, you're like, okay, I'm excited to make a mistake because then I'm going to learn something I didn't know before. I'm going to grow a skill I didn't have before. I'm going to make a team I didn't have before. Something better is going to come from the fact that I'm excited to lean towards my edge of comfort. We don't make mistakes only if we're playing small.
Yes, I'm with you. I'm with you there. And I see you've walked that path. And like, why would anyone want to make a difference now? Like, what do you have to say from the stand that you are now? You know, it's like you're a stand still. You're taking a stand for something, for a bigger vision that you seem to have. And why would anyone, like, why is it so worthwhile to step outside the comfort zone and really take a stand for something bigger?
For me, I remind people we're only given one life that we know of. We have all kinds of different belief systems that says we might reincarnate or different things, but in this present moment, we're given one life and we're given one moment. And for me, what else would I want to do with my life than to offer it in making a difference in the world? Like, what a great gift to use my life to do what I can to make a positive contribution. I will not always win. We will not always win. We will also make some wins that will then have setbacks later on. So we don't offer our lives in service attached to the goal. We offer our lives in service because what else would I want to do with the gift of my miraculous life? Why wouldn't I want to offer my life to working to help protect forests or clean up the air or clean up the water or protect our children, that is our human family's children, not just my child, but all of our children? Why wouldn't I want to do with that with my life? Like, to me, that's what makes life beautiful and incredible. It is also heartbreaking. I tell people we have to be willing to accept that our heart is going to break over and over and over again, because to love is to sign up for grief. To love anything or anyone is to sign up for grief. It is to sign up for heartbreak. It is to sign up for those moments of despair. But then we remember, and in this moment, I can still choose love all over again. It's not something that we choose and then at some point it stops. It's a moment by moment thing. And so right now, my heart is broken. This world that we're living in and what we're doing to each other and the planet is horrific. But if anything, that just makes the call to my heart even louder. It just makes me want to serve even more. And there are days when I just sob and cry because of what we're doing to our planetary family, all beings. And yet I I choose then to allow myself to feel all the feelings, the sadness, the grief, the rage, the overwhelm, the despair. I feel them all completely. And then I bow to those feelings in gratitude and say, thank you for allowing me to be this person who feels so deeply. And now I'm going to use the depth of my feeling to go back out there and to find another way to serve.
Mhm. Yeah, touches me. It's like this is really a core piece of being human, is to have a heart that feels. And
Yes.
shutting the heart off so that we're not having heartbreak is actually part of the problem.
Yes, it is. I explain to people in the medical field, in order to heal, we have to feel. So our body will literally send like nerve pain, for example. Our body will send nerve pain to say, oops, something's wrong. Like, there's a pinched something or something's out of balance. We will get a stomach ache. That's a pain to tell us something's out of balance in our gut biome. When we break a bone, our body sends pain literally to say, look, something's wrong in the body. So the pain signals, those feeling sensations, are literally our body's way of working to help us heal. And if we didn't know these things were out of balance in ourselves, we would actually further injure ourselves. We would not know an infection was happening. We would actually not know a bone was broken unless we saw it. If the body wasn't giving us pain signals to say, hey, stop, notice. And so it's the same for the rest of life. These pain signals in our heart, we have to feel in order to heal. So we are seeing in the world the consequences of a human family shut down, where we see ourselves as separate from one another, where we see ourselves as separate from the planet, and we are shut down to the feelings of what it means to be connected. And so, although it does hurt to feel that connection, it is also vital that if we hope to heal, we absolutely must also feel.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I'm involved in a context called possibility management that is about initiation into adulthood through in like really healing old feelings and making use of the feelings that are right here, right now to actually navigate this moment.
Hmm.
And some of these people have actually contributed that this interview could happen. So I'm really grateful for that.
Oh, I'm grateful to that too.
And that makes like that shows to me like what we're capable of, like what you're speaking about is actually also doesn't happen in isolation, right? It's like I've heard you speak about in other interviews about having a team or being collaborating with each other. Like, can you say something about that?
Recognizing myself as part of team was one of my big learning opportunities because growing up in a household where I was not celebrated for being my authentic self made one of my coping mechanisms be fine, I'm just going to do it all myself. You know, I'm just going to take care of everything in myself. I left home at a very young age and have done a lot with my life starting when I was very young. So my gifts are sourced from this thing where okay, fine, I'm just going to figure out how to do it myself. So I have a lot of gifts from that place. But one of my growing edges was to learn how to soften and trust and be willing to work with other people because my past experiences meant warning, not safe. If you trust people, you're going to be let down, you're going to be hurt. Don't do it, don't do it. And then my calling was to climb into a tree where I had to rely on other people. I had no other choice. Like if I wanted to help the forest in this way that I was being called to help, I had to rely on other people. And it people don't really realize that that was actually a part of really big growth for me. A big part of my learning was to let my defenses down and learn how to trust people that I didn't even know. I was up there for 2 years. In the beginning, there was no coherent team. It was only over time that a team began to form. So that team formed on the ground, people I didn't even know. And so I was having to learn how to trust and build team with people I hadn't even met face to face to begin with. So it was a big push on my edge of comfort of like, whoa, I don't want to trust you, but I have to. The redwoods are demanding it of me, so I guess I better learn to trust. And the beautiful thing that I learned though is that because I use analogies and metaphors, it's like a puzzle. When you're putting a puzzle together to get the beautiful picture when it's completed, puzzles have the part that poke out and the parts that cave in. And the caved in parts are the parts where we might say, well, that's my weakness. And I call it a receptivity point. It's only a weakness if we're not aware of it. If we're aware of this area, then it's a receptivity point, and we can look for people who have a strength in that area. And it's like the puzzle piece that pokes out. And we look for the right people, the right resources, whatever it may be, the right tools that then fit that receptivity point. And that's how we build the complete picture. And so then I don't have to be the one who does everything. I don't have to be the superhuman that's just going to put that whole picture together by myself because it's not possible. I can kind of force pieces to fit and kind of make it look like it's pushed together, but it's not really pushed together in the same way as when we create team and when we recognize, each one of us recognize our gifts. I remind people, yes, I did something that's never been done before. I have been through a lot of hardships, including when I was in the tree, but also after. I've been able to do a lot of difficult things, but the success, for example, of that tree sit was directly related to the success of the team that built up. And the team became people who didn't feel they had to compete with me. They saw us as team together. And the crew that hiked up my food and supplies up and down that crazy difficult mountain, they couldn't do the job that I was doing. But my body wouldn't let me do the job that they were doing. So I couldn't have been them any more than they could have been me. And so in that understanding, we're equal. No one's better than the other. We all recognize that each one of us on that team, it was a very small team, but each person on that team was absolutely vital to the success we eventually ended up winning to protect the tree and the grove around it. I could not have done it on my own. And I could not do it at the incredible success we were able to achieve until the team came together where each person had a unique gift to offer and saw their unique gift as unique, as special, as important. And people weren't fighting with one another. People weren't trying to say someone should have a particular power and someone else should have a particular power. Everybody, each one of us just saw this is our role on the team, and we're going to do this team as best as we can.
Yeah, that seems to be the invitation of our time, to really come together for, it could be a specific project, and it's also like for the planet, to work as a team and stop competing, especially as women. I think we're really well skilled in competing with each other.
Yes, it's a sad thing that I experienced most of my life, actually, was women feeling like they should be competing with me or becoming um, saying bad things about me behind my back and things like that. And I never understood it. But then as I became more active in the world, I began to understand that it's really because of the paradigm that we've created as a human family that encourages that kind of behavior, because we encourage uh, instead of cooperation and collaboration, we encourage competition. And when we have systems that are in place that encourage a more competitive type nature and a more even male dominated type system, then women start going to their lowest denominator. They start going to their lowest capacity because that's what the system is kind of encouraging and enforcing. And yet our true nature is cooperation. Our true nature is collaboration. And if we go way back into historical documents in indigenous cultures all over the world, all of us come from an indigenous culture somewhere. Even a white European mutt like me, who has like 5 different genetic DNA cultural things running around inside of me, all of us have an indigenous lineage that started somewhere. And in all indigenous lineages, like the women were the ones connected to the earth and were seen as sacred and important and powerful because of that connection. And they weren't competing. And in a village, if one person had a child, all the aunties helped raise that child. And if someone got sick, there were certain people in the village who helped with the person who was sick. And if someone needed counseling or guidance, well, there were different levels of people who could offer that, but no one was seen as, oh, this is the only person of power in the community. Everyone was seen as contributing because they had to. Their literal survival depended on it. And then as time has gone on and we've been disconnected from those ancestral roots, we've become competitive. But now we're seeing the results of that because we're seeing destruction instead of beauty. We're seeing devastation instead of helping one another, we're seeing the impact of what happens when we think this way. So this time is calling for us to be willing to collaborate as a collective, and especially as women, to let go of that societal push to compete and compare who looks the best, who has the most power, who has the most money, who, whatever the story may be, and let go of that and say, I refuse to participate. I'm not going to participate in that. I'm going to look for my allies. I'm going to look for my sisters, my aunties, my mothers, my grandmothers. And when we have a difference, which we will have for sure, I've had a lot of them, we will find healthier ways to address them. We don't have to agree on everything, and we never will. But we do have to find healthier ways to address our differences. I talk about how do we build bridges instead of burn them. And a bridge allows for movement both ways. We don't all have to stand in the same spot, but we can create bridges so that energy can move in both directions, even if we're not standing in the same spot. But we have to build the bridges instead of burn them.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia, for speaking and saying all these things. It touches me.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I have a feeling that if you and I were to sit down and talk, we could talk for hours and just be resonating with one another's sharings.
Yes, especially the indigenous nature thing that you just brought is really a piece of my next research, and I'm glad to hear what you've said about that. And gonna revisit.
Yes, I have a poem that came to me called Women in the Earth. And when you read it, it can be read as if a woman is talking to you or the earth is talking to you. And it was partly inspired because growing up in the household that I was raised in, I never felt like I belonged. I was like, who am I? Like, what is this thing that I am? I just didn't make sense. And then I started doing research, and I found that the witch hunts that are known in the United States and Salem actually started first in Europe. And so that they, in order to shift the paradigm of power, they had to start oppressing women. And in order to do that, they had to wipe out the connection of women with their own bodies and women with their connection to nature. And so the quote unquote witch hunt started in Europe. And any woman who was an herbalist or had any kind of belief in anything other than the church was hunted down and would sometimes be raped, would sometimes be tortured, would sometimes be killed, and the inquisition of all of them. And I found this story, the herstory, not the history, I guess it's the history of oppression and violence and the herstory of refusing to accept that. And these women, when they knew that what was going to happen is they were going to be caught and found, and they were going to be forced to say that they didn't believe what they believed in order to survive. And even if they did say, yes, it's true, I no longer believe that, or I never did believe that, and point out other women and say, you have to go get her in order to save me, you have to go get her. And these women refused to do it. And they grabbed arms with each other. They would go to the cliffs over the sea, and they would grab arms with each other and jump off the cliffs into the sea, because they refused to let go of their sovereign right to their own divine feminine power and their own divine feminine connection with the natural world. And there's this line in the poem that says, and I will grab hands with thousands to run off cliffs into the sea rather than to give up the magic that is me. And then the end of the poem comes back to, and I will emerge with the thousands, and emerging from all of nature. And it talks about reclaiming the magic that is me. And it was so powerful to me to find these women in hidden really deep down, to know that, oh, those are my women. Those are where I come from. My immediate family doesn't really make sense, but those are my people. Finally, I make sense.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'll look forward to reading the poem. Find it. Yeah, it's time to reclaim that. Thank you, Julia.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to say to finish? Anything else?
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. It's clear that you're committed to helping women remember our authentic selves. And there's many ways to talk about it, many ways to look at it, many ways to explore it. But really what's at the core of it is you're creating a space for women to remember what we've forgotten. It's all there. We've just forgotten it, or there's blocks to that knowing. And these conversations and these kind of things are just ways to remember and to access what we might be blocked to. So thank you for doing that.
I want to also mention that women could connect with you so that they could reconnect and reclaim that with themselves. So your website is juliabutterflyhill.com, and
Yes.
you offer coaching, you offer interviews and speaking engagements.
I love to work with people. I'm like, well, if I've had to learn all the lessons the hard way, I would like to share it with others so that maybe others don't have to learn them all the hard way.
Cool. Thank you so much for going first. You're a woman that goes first. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Take care.